You are now tuned into the Wake the Flock Up Network.
Yo, this is Tech 9 on Wake the Flock Up. So hurry up and do it. Wake the flock up. Tech 9, baby.
Wake the flock up. Immortal technique. You know what it is, baby.
Bang, bang.
Yo, this is D-Spawn. I'm chilling with my man Concept, and this is Wake the Flock Up.
Yo, what's the deal? It's yours truly, the magnificent DJ Jazzy Jeff, checking out Wake the Flock Up.
You're the reason why I do what I do. And I started a list a long time ago with all the artists I've ever wanted to interview.
I know your list. I follow you.
Okay.
I read all your tweets.
I appreciate you doing that.
You said this was your mission.
It was my mission.
Come here,
Absolutely.
and if you didn't get this interview,
my wife won't let me go home, so you got to give me 10 minutes of your time.
And if it wasn't for your wife,
yes,
because I know she's a beautiful woman.
Yes, she is.
Who keeps that household together.
That's right.
So I want to make sure she got a beautiful man that's gonna come home
bro,
to her, man.
Thank you so much.
Concept, what up, man? Any questions? What you got?
Listen, you're out of your mind.
No. Okay,
I don't believe they let you, I guess, run about with your little recorder saying these fucking horrible things to people.
Wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, everybody wake the fuck up. From the city to the burbs, every street, every curve, you can block what you heard, that's the cure. Wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, everybody wake the fuck up. From the city to the burbs, every street, every curve, you can block what you heard, that's the cure. Wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, everybody wake the fuck up.
welcome back to the show. You're now listening to Wake the Flock Up with Concept 714. You know how many years I've said that now? I've said that for 6 years now.
6 years.
That exact sentence. For 6 years. Coming up, this October will be 6 years that I've been doing the podcast. And it's been cool. Like, I enjoy it. It's fun. But it also opened up a lot of doors to things that I never thought that I would get to do or get to see. You know? And it's just fascinating how one thing can take you to another without you realizing that it's doing that. Mm-hmm. Right? The way when I started becoming an adult, it became clear, like, if life has your path, like once you start to recognize what you're kind of here for, like, life facilitates things to happen for you. Right. I'm a sole believer in that. I don't know how you feel about that, but
yeah, no,
like,
I definitely.
If once you find what you're,
once you figure it out, but if you don't know, then I think you might kind of wander around a little bit.
But then the thing is, do you really know? Like, do you ever really know? Like, yes, this is it. I'm sure comes a time where it becomes like, well, what else will I do? Like, what else could I do?
Right.
This is what I've done. You know, I think for some people it goes in that direction, and in the other direction, some people never search for what it is that they're supposed to be.
I think that's most people.
Yeah, I don't think you know to search, right?
I don't know. I mean, I think, here in America especially, I think that people are, like, we're pretty privileged as a nation, right? Because we haven't seen civil war. We haven't had to flee, at least in our lifetimes. And so what I notice is that parents here kind of say to their kids, just do what makes you happy. Whereas in other cultures, they don't say that because they can't really, they don't have the luxury of just do what makes you happy. They have to do what's practical for the family or for what's going to, surviving, right?
Yeah.
So I think here, people are told from a young age, do what makes you happy. And so it kind of makes a person think, well, what makes me happy? And then they have to search for that. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe everybody thinks about it. I don't know if they actually end up pursuing it, because a lot of times what makes you happy is a lot of hard work to get to that goal. And a lot of people are unwilling to do that work.
Do you think words like goal, happy, I think those are American words. I don't think any other people in the world really look for, like, the pursuit of happiness. Like, that's not their goal, because sometimes it's just physically like, oh, I need to find what to eat. So, like, being happy is not, like, priority number one. Right. How can that's immediate like that, right? And then there's also where it's like, no, like something like Russia. Do you even get that? Is that even a thing? Like, pursuing what you're happy in Russia, what makes you happy? I don't know if Russia.
I think the Russians are don't believe all the propaganda. I think that the Russians are finding. Yeah, I think that they're going around looking for happiness.
But I think it's such an American thing to be like, I'm going to go do.
Well, it's certainly a privileged thing. You know, it's like if you're living in a lifestyle where you don't have to worry about how to get your food and, you know, how you're, whether or not there's going to be a war and you have to flee or something like that, and you have to become a migrant or a refugee or. I mean, I think if you're, I think Americans are privileged to the point, and Western, I think all of the Western world is privileged to the point where they can actually think of, you know, what's happiness and pursuing like love and, you know, where so many parts of the world still people are in arranged marriages, you know, their families have to arrange their situations. They don't get to fall in love. You know, my mom didn't get to do that.
Right.
Because she was a refugee that fled war. So when she came over here to America, it was about survival. So her mom said to her, you're not going to look for love. You're going to look for practical. You need a white guy that's going to support you because I can't. So go get married. And it wasn't about the pursuit of happiness or the pursuit of love. It was the pursuit of survival. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a privileged Western thing. You know, anywhere that's privileged.
I think we need to say this because... let's say this now before we continue the rest of the conversation because I want to talk about politics, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is we have to stop and really truly realize that we're living in the best time, in the best possible place in that time to live.
You think so?
Yeah, 100%. Don't you think that this is the absolute best that it's ever been for human beings?
Oh, yeah.
In the best absolute place that you could possibly live in.
I don't know about that.
You don't think so?
No, I don't know about that.
In the where you could live, you think there's a better place for?
Oh yeah,
to live in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the United States is great. I don't think it's the best.
In reference to what?
Well, quality of life. You know, I just got back from Europe, and I was there for.
You were in Italy.
Yeah, for several months.
Okay, kind of cool.
Yeah. And you know, there are just aspects to Europe that I think are way better. And especially the Italians, like they know how to live. Those people know how to live, and they do it really well. I mean, they do know the value of life. They just, you know, what's so interesting about the Italian mentality, for example, is that they stay in their towns. They don't really, you know, it's kind of an American idea to
spread out.
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna fly the coop, right, or fly the nest, or whatever it is, right?
Fly the coop.
Yeah. I'm gonna get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make something of myself, and that's something that's very American. Whereas in Italy, they're like, no, I want to stay close to home because this is where my family is.
My mama, my grandma, my whatever is here.
Their childhood friends. Yeah. They value their hometown.
Yeah.
They value their families. They value the little home they grew up in. They don't have the desire, unlike America, they don't have the desire to upgrade their homes. Like here, it's like you get your starter home, and then you got to go and get a bigger home, and then you got to get a bigger home, right? And over there, they just have their childhood home that they grew up in, and it's like the childhood home that their grandmother grew up in, and they're totally fine living in that, and they have no desire to upgrade to a bigger, better space. They just maybe remodel the one they've got. And they're all living in tiny little places. And I mean, the Italians care about their cars and their clothes. But as far as, you know, they want to stay at home near, I feel like they understand what real value is. Same thing with Denmark. I spent some time in Denmark. I flew in and out of Denmark and was there for a week each time, and then went to Italy for the months on end. But, you know, the Danish are the same way, where they just don't have the same materialistic, they don't value the materialism that the United States does. And this is pretty much all throughout Europe. They just don't have that same, I need a bigger, better house. I need a bigger, better car. I need a bigger, better, I need to show off. Like they don't have that keeping up with the Joneses mentality. And there's something really freeing about that.
It all happened really after like World War II, right? Where like America and the world decided which way are we going to go as a country, and America made its choice. In Italy, but the reason that I feel the European countries have such a different lifestyle and outlook in life is because they were attacked. Their buildings were they were decimated. Like London, London, the city, it was complete. I mean, like so. Carpet bombings, and I mean, like they felt it at home. Here in America, we didn't feel that. We didn't get to sympathize for our fellow neighbors like they do. So that's why we don't have universal healthcare. Right. They understood, oh my God, like it was an issue. Like, how, of course, we're going to help everybody out. Like right now, it's time to come together. And America didn't get to experience that.
Only after 9/11 a little.
But even then it was two towers.
Right. It wasn't the entire nation.
No, it wasn't it was a communal. Hey, what the hell? We're the U.S. How dare you do that? I think that was the major feeling was like, we're the U.S. Fuck you. How dare you attack us? I don't think it was like, oh my God, look at these 2,000 people that died. It was just like, on our turf? You're going to bring it on our turf?
Yeah.
And our response was one of like, okay, well then we'll just randomly start doing what we do.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, so the European countries have a different outlook on life and
I prefer it. So that's why I don't think the United States. I think this is a great time to live. I think that's going to be true for the people that are alive 100 years from now when we're dead. I think for them, hopefully,
be in America,
just in the world. I feel like the world is always progressing. I feel like we are making progress.
You think so?
Yes, as much as people think we're not. Sometimes I do think the world is making progress.
There's places or countries or governments that fight that progress tooth and nail.
Yeah, there are.
Okay,
yeah.
and that is still the case. Like, people want to pretend like America's a super wise country. We've been around like 300 years. Like compared to like China or whatever, like we're nothing.
Right, we're babies.
We're babies. And to say that we figured out the right way to
we definitely have not.
Because come on, like like the forefathers they could not foresee. There was no way that they could possibly try to.
Yeah.
And the republic that they try to build, right, is not the democracy that this is now. Like the republic and democracy are different things, and I think once it turned into a democracy, it was just like, okay, it can only go that way because that's the way democracies go. Right. It goes really dope, everyone's having a really good time, and then eventually it's just it all goes down because there's too many people deciding too many things. When a republic, it's like these are stated laws. So therefore, if you follow these laws, you will have the perpetuity of
Right.
But when we made that switch over because of capitalism, hey, I want to make money, so I want to be able to keep that money, and I don't want to share with anyone. Like once that became the American way, social, security or healthcare to my fellow human being. I don't know about that, but I better get it. It's a weird place to live, but I also think it's the best place because you have your own studio in your own house and you're able to spew and say whatever it is. You could be Alex Jones or you could be Kim Iversen, right? You could be.
Sometimes people think that's one and the same, I'll tell you.
Right, but you have the right. The law stricken, the law protected right to say what you want, when you want, however you want to say it. That's awesome.
To a degree. Yeah.
I mean, without threats and.
Well, minus capitalism and the control of the capitalistic. The control of the social media. I get shadow banned all the time with the content that I talk about. They don't really ban me or deplatform me yet.
Yeah.
But they do other things they do other things,
Which is a problem in itself. When Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, they start to, and then this is the thing. It's not based on like laws.
Right.
It's on their political preference that they're going to silence you. Like, how is that okay? Like, how is that even permissible?
Yeah, what's really crazy is, because I'm on YouTube, so Google is controlling YouTube. And Nancy Pelosi is their representative. And anytime I talk bad about Nancy Pelosi, they shadow ban that content. It's the strangest thing. It's only videos about her. They demonetize them and they shadow ban them. So, which means they don't allow them to be seen. So, like, if you subscribe to my channel, it wouldn't pop up as a recommended video from my channel.
Like, go digging deeper.
Yeah, you'd have to go to my channel to find it. It wouldn't show up in your subscription feed.
Yeah, and that's like the complex YouTube version of it because Facebook does it simple. You'll be like basically like your friends won't see it or like it just won't show up.
Right.
And it's certain words. And again, it's not because you're sprouting out hate speech or it's like, Trump is like whatever it is you're giving your opinion. Okay, because it has these words on it, we don't allow it on our platform.
Right. That's how they are with Nancy Pelosi. I'm like, Nancy Pelosi? Like, of all things you could shadow ban, Nancy Pelosi, but it's because she's their rep and they're protecting her.
Yeah, but it is a land, I think, that still has a lot of magic in it, like the U.S.
Yeah.
Especially this new generation of like me, like just like freelance, social media journalism where where you can, the one of the most fascinating things I think people need to stop and realize is the way Joe Rogan has grown.
Gosh,
to be
that guy is like the male Oprah.
To be an entity in this new media form of like, I don't work for MSNBC or Fox.
Anybody.
And he really doesn't have, he has his own politics, but it's still a place where it's accessible and it's just like really some dude.
Right.
And that's awesome that it's just some dude getting more views than the CNNs and the NBC. That means people are looking for information in certain ways.
Oh yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah.
And he's quietly a genius at bringing people to that because he plays the very much like, oh man, I'm just a dude asking questions. Right.
He's very curious. Well, he's very, very intelligent and he's very curious. I'm a huge fan of Joe Rogan.
Right.
I have a giant crush on him.
Oh, do you really? Have you ever met Joe Rogan?
No.
Really? Okay.
No. But I'm hoping that I'll eventually be on his show, which actually is a pretty good possibility.
That's awesome.
It's actually
That's
like
fantastic.
in the trajectory of because the people that are in my space on YouTube have all been on his show, so it's just kind of a matter of time. I just have to get enough subscribers for him to pay attention.
Well, it's a daily show, right?
Yeah.
So the content he needs people.
Yeah, and I'm the type of person he talks to.
You're right
yeah.
there, yeah.
He talks to people just like me, doing exactly what I'm doing. So
tell me, what is it that you do, Kim?
Well, I do a political talk show right on YouTube. So I launched the show exactly 3 months ago today.
Congratulations!
Thank you. It's my 3-month anniversary.
Nice.
for this iteration.
Okay.
And it's basically
what's the name of the show?
It's just Kim Iversen Show.
Kim Iversen.
Yeah, so it's KimIversonShow.com on YouTube or something like that. So, and I just talk politics. I am a I label myself a progressive, I guess. But that term has been co-opted quite a bit, so that's difficult for people to really understand. I'm not a traditional Democrat. I'm not a Democrat at all. Actually, I've never been a registered Democrat. I'm an independent. So but I am on the left, I would say, of the spectrum. But I do have a lot of right wingers who like my show quite a bit.
Yeah.
They cite that they're like, wow, a rational liberal. I didn't think that there were people like you anymore.
It is the you're trying too hard, so people get discouraged, or just it comes out disingenuous when you some liberals. I feel just you can't possibly believe that. Like a lot of times I look at them, there's no way you believe that.
Right.
You heard someone say that and it fits but there's no way that you reach that conclusion. Right?
Right. Yeah. So, I just look for the truth. That's what I try to do. I look for truth. I look for facts. I am economically progressive, I would say. I would say I'm a social libertarian.
Social libertarian.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm more of a social libertarian, but I'm an economic progressive. So I'm big on like Medicare for all, universal education, getting the corruption and money out of government, ending the interventionist wars, stuff that's like that. But then socially, I definitely don't get, if any, I push back quite a bit actually on a lot of the narratives that are being put out there with the identity politics and a lot of the constant racism talk and constant, it's like misogyny and sexism and racism and bigotry. And it's like, I just don't quite, I don't get into that as much. I just think it's distraction and it's not nearly as prevalent as they try to make it seem. And at the end of the day, there's a reason why they're putting that narrative out there, and it's to distract us from the reality of it, which is that the people with all the money are controlling everything.
Yeah.
And the way that they're going to get you to not pay attention to the fact that they bought our entire government out is by getting us to scream at each other about, well, you're the reason I'm being held back because you don't like me because of the color of my skin, or you don't like me because of my gender, or you don't like me because of where I come from. And they get us to scream about these narratives, and I don't really buy into all that as much. So I'm a social libertarian. I feel like stay out of my way. I'll stay out of your way. Let's not make any laws that get into each other's way. But beyond that, I think we've, yeah.
The thing with, so you have the Democrats and the Republicans, and then the thing about the two-party system is that it sucks.
Right.
Can we just?
It very much sucks.
It's very specific. Specific two-party system. It's just,
right, which we haven't always had in our government.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So if you start to really dig into it, like the fact that it's kind of it's become the way that it is now.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be. You know, when Lincoln was elected president, there were 4 parties. And he did not get the popular vote. You know that he only won because of the Electoral College.
He said that. He said, like, if you people saw me, like, they wouldn't vote for me.
Well, and people didn't. I mean, he didn't get the popular vote. He
Right.
won because of the Electoral College. Now
Right.
you've got all these liberals calling for the abolishment of the Electoral College. And it's like, you realize this is how Lincoln won.
Yeah,
I mean, no, you don't. What you know is that the recent history of George Bush and Trump winning because of the Electoral College. But you don't dig back far enough into history to realize that there was a time when we didn't have a 2-party system, and the only way to win was through the Electoral College because no one got the popular vote.
Yeah, there was just too many candidates.
There was 4 evenly split candidates.
That's another thing. So I like to pride myself in involvement in hip hop because it can't stop me from being involved. So
Yeah.
I like it. So like out there, and I like being. So hip hop doesn't talk about politics, it doesn't talk about religion, it doesn't talk about socioeconomic.
Sometimes though, kind of in the lyrics.
There,
Right?
There'll be because first of all, it's difficult to be like, yo, balance your checkbook, make sure you go. I get that.
Right.
Even though there's acts, dead presidents, and more techniques who like specifically focus on that. But that's a rare thing. So the regular the image on TV of a hip hop person is he's high, he's drunk, there's a bunch of girls, that's the and it's also pushed. So I'm not gonna lie, it's not like the media has to look very far for it. You know, hip hop gives out that vibe.
Right.
But I think you need to mature. So if hip hop wants to take itself seriously as a culture,
Yeah.
right, as an established culture, the music kind of, then you really have to start looking at what it is you're talking about and what you're avoiding on purpose. So hip hop on purpose avoids politics. You don't ever hear the Game say he's a Democrat or Puffy say he's a Republican. Like, it's a thing that's taboo in hip hop because you don't want to offend the purchaser.
Right.
Because it's still all about downloads and stuff. So if Eminem comes out and he says, hey, I'm a Republican, okay, well then all the Democrats aren't going to download the next single.
Right. Well, that's kind of been a problem in entertainment in general,
Yeah.
right?
But
Except Hollywood's liberal.
But are they liberal?
You know, I am really suspicious of the entire Hollywood thing.
Because they're still rich white people.
They
right?
are, and I really believe that they're doing it for the fame. I believe a lot of them are just like, oh, here's a way to get recognized and to be in the tabloids and to be in front and center. It's to take a stand on something.
The late night
that's what we're
shows
gonna
is
do.
a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
All of them happen to feel that way politically? Are we really that
Yeah,
every
right.
single late night show, or who watches late night shows?
Yeah, you know, and
That's really where it is, right?
well, and I think what's interesting is that who watches late night shows were actually like the middle of America mostly, who were more conservative. I just think that they've been totally alienated. And yeah, you know, it's really interesting how, I mean, here at the end of the day, like Fox News, for example, is still the #1 news network by a long shot.
Is that so?
Yes, they actually have more viewers than CNN and MSNBC combined.
Is that real?
Yeah.
Is that a true?
Yeah. Yes. Fox News is #1 by a long shot. So, you know, these people are in the middle of America watching
So they
this shit.
exist. These people are around. These people feel.
They're half the country, literally half the country.
All the flyover states, right?
Yeah, all the flyover states.
Well, okay. So the thing that I was
which
telling
is
you
where
about,
I'm from.
you're
Yeah.
from Idaho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From Idaho.
Young Kim, growing up, are our views any different than they are now?
No, so what's interesting about me is I grew up in Idaho, but I'm half Asian, right? So I'm half white, half Asian, half Vietnamese. My white farming family that I grew up with in Idaho are Democrats, like total blue collar Democrats.
Okay.
And my mom's side of the family, who then migrated down here to LA.
Yeah.
So they're living in Los Angeles. They're refugees, you know, immigrants, people of color, Vietnamese.
Yeah.
Total Trump supporting Republicans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Okay.
The difference is my mom's side of the family, they're all business owners. And my dad's side of the family were all blue collar workers. My dad was the only one to go to college.
Yeah.
You know, in his generation.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, so growing up in Idaho, I was raised by my dad and his side of the family. My mom was down here. My mom took off when I was only about 3 years old, and she moved down to LA. So I was with my dad, and I saw my mom maybe once or twice a year, not for very long. She wasn't really much a part of my life. But yeah, so I grew up with the blue collar Democrats who were always Democrats. And in a very red state, And so I wouldn't say when I was 14, I did join the Mormon church. So that was like,
whoa, I had no idea.
Yeah, well, I grew up Buddhist and Catholic. So my mom's side of the family's Buddhist, my dad's side's Catholic.
And you practice?
Mormonism?
Or Buddhist and Catholicism?
Yeah. When I was young, right. Yeah, my grandparents were very Catholic. They moved right behind the church.
There's so many. I found the Catholic faith to be such a fascinating thing to convince yourself of.
Yeah,
that is. It's just like it really is like wow, like that is, dude.
Especially when you go to like Italy.
Oh, where it's like real Catholics, right?
I mean, Rome, the Vatican is right there.
Yeah.
And that's when you realize how corrupted churches are. When you go to Italy and you see the wealth of the Catholic Church and their cathedrals and it's like, of course this was ruling society.
Yeah.
Of course they were trying to maintain power.
Yeah.
And they were using God as the weapon.
Right.
To maintain control over people.
So, but it's embedded in human beings though, right? Like religion and maybe not religion, but the search for something.
For a higher power.
The wanting to belong. The wanting of something to be true is so strong with some people.
Yeah.
That they allow themselves to be convinced of certain things that are just amazing. They're just astonishing.
Well, I think it's like desperation. When you're desperate and you feel like your life, you're challenged in life. You're feeling hardships. And so what do? You look for something to alleviate that hardship. You're not going to make more money. You know that you're not going to, get over your illness necessarily right away or something like this, right? That your kid is sick and you're not getting paid much or whatever that might be. And so in order to alleviate your hardship, you look for a higher power that's going to give you the riches eventually. So people are still seeking riches, but in religion, it's heaven, or it's, if you're a follower of whatever the religion might be, right? There's a promise of wealth and kingdoms beyond once you die. Then you get some kingdom. And that's what so it's ultimately still a quest for wealth.
It's ultimately selfish, a selfish kind of idea. But, look, and I'm a Christian, okay, by faith, I'm a Christian. But I'm going to do some research and find the right type of Christian.
Are you a Catholic?
No. Christian.
Really?
Yeah. So my grandmother was Catholic all her life.
I was going to say, because you're Hispanic.
I'm Hispanic, so my grandmother's from Guadalajara, like a huge Catholic population.
Right.
But once she got older, she changed to Christian faith.
Well, that Catholics are Christian.
Yes, but you have very different ways of worship.
Okay.
When you're a Catholic than when you're a Christian, like a Protestant or something like that. Like there's no saints in the Christian.
Got it. Right.
In Catholicism, they still have saints.
Yeah.
And there's also baptism and there's all these weird things that, to me, that's why as a Christian, like I look at the Catholic that it's supposed to be a Christ-based religion.
Yeah.
But they have so many other figures that they pray to that it tells you should have no other gods but me, but they pray to saints. So like what I'm saying is religion has its place, and I feel that if more people were religious, it has a discipline to it.
Yeah.
That I think a lot of people can really benefit from. The discipline of a true, like the discipline of a Jew, like the Jews, like Orthodox Jews. That is discipline to live like that.
I used to live with 2 Orthodox Jews when I was in college.
Yeah.
I got a room for rent with these 2 Orthodox guys, and I mean, strict. Like I had my own refrigerator. Yeah. And I'm actually
can't touch the food. Can't touch.
Right. I'm actually surprised they let me live with them because I was a woman.
That's a good point.
But on Saturdays, like for example, they'd go around and they would tape all the lights. Yeah. Because they couldn't flip the lights on or off.
Well, I'm going to break it to you, Kim. It's still 2 dudes and there's like a hot Asian chick that wants to live with them. They're not going to be like, oh no, let's not.
Well, they couldn't come near me really. Like it was like this weird, and they would actually kind of use me to do things for them on Saturdays.
That's why they had you.
Yeah. They were like, can you turn on that light?
Wait, tomorrow's Sabbath? Do you have anywhere to go tomorrow? Yeah.
And they could only take so many steps.
So what I'm saying, there's a discipline to religion, and with discipline, I think comes some kind of nobility, right? That's why Neil deGrasse Tyson, we all understand that man has discipline.
Yeah.
Brian Cox, there's discipline behind these geniuses. They must have it, right? So you give them there's a level of respect to people of that. Monks.
Yeah.
Everyone
my
respects
God.
a monk.
Right.
That level of discipline that you can gain from religion. But I also think it's a very dangerous thing to willy-nilly just start kind of like waving around the gun god.
Right.
The God gun of like, hey, you're gay, pray it away.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Like God
Once it
doesn't
becomes-
work like that. It
Yeah.
doesn't work. You can't point it at a problem and expect that it doesn't.
Right. Like this is going to go away. I'm going to pray this away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I really, I'm really grateful for my time being Mormon when I was. So I joined the Mormon church when I was 14. So I was raised Buddhist and Catholic and practicing on both. I know people were always confused when I was growing up. How could that possibly be? But when you're from a mixed home with mixed, and my mom wasn't around, but I was around her mom, my grandmother and my mom's sisters quite a bit. So
In retrospect, what is, you think, and respectfully,
yeah,
the weirdest thing about the Buddhist religion? Like
Buddhism.
Was there a certain kind of like
Okay,
ritual
I would say,
or like a thing that really now they're looking at like, whoa. What?
No, I mean, because they're still doing it. My grandmother is really, really, really Buddhist. And so her home, basically, her whole house is a shrine. I would say maybe the thing is like the giving of fruit. So what you have to do is you donate fruit to the spirits, and you can't eat the fruit until the spirits have eaten the fruit, the spirit of the fruit. So this is a daily gift that is given to the spirits of your ancestors.
How do you know once the spirit of the fruit's been eaten?
When the incense is fully burnt out.
Any incense that you put?
Yeah, so you use this incense. So you put the fruit in a bowl in front of like the Buddhist statues.
Yeah.
And then you take the incense, you light it, you kind of do a little bit of a prayer with these. It's like a prayer type thing with the incense.
Yeah.
Then you stick the incense in like the incense holder.
Wow.
And when it's done burning, then the fruit can be eaten.
Is it encouraged to be eaten? Is it you're supposed to eat it?
No.
But you can at that point.
Yeah. Then it's like, okay, it's fine to eat.
Is this to say, hey, I remember you, or is it like to feed the spirits?
You're right. It's like to feed your ancestors' spirits. Yeah. And that's like, so there's a shit ton of fruit in Asian homes.
Yeah.
Usually. Because every day they're giving fruit to, their ancestors. And so there's a lot of fruit. There's a lot of fruit around.
It is weird.
It's different. Yeah, it is.
It's a different. I won't say weird. It's definitely an interesting kind of.
I mean, it kind of is. Yeah. I mean, it's.
It just sounds like someone missed like their grandparents like really bad one day, and just said,
Yeah.
"Hey, you know what? I'm gonna leave this out." For
Well,
them." And
Asian
it just
culture
turned into like
is very much like honor your ancestors and honor your elders, and it's just kind of a part of that.
the opposite of American culture, right? You only live once.
Honestly, it
you're
is.
number one.
Well-
You're succeed because America has willingly traded in any kind of shame for gain, right? Like so, like there's no more shame. People don't have shame. If people had shame still, they were 80% of crime would deteriorate. Like
Right.
because they would be like, no, it's shameful to be a prisoner. It's shameful to. And now we live in an era like, don't you dare judge me.
Yeah, except Asians.
Oh, is that really?
We're still very much shamed.
Self-shaming, huh?
No, I mean it's very real. Asian shame is very, very real, and like we get shamed on a regular basis in our families.
It's a discipline, right?
It's a form of it, I guess. It definitely is why I think, and I've talked about this numerous times on my show, but why Asians have excelled as in schools, right? Like most of the universities now are like filled predominantly with Asians, and yet Asians are not the majority population in this country, right? But the universities are filled with Asians.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and
Very
it's because of
interesting.
the shame. We're shamed to get good grades. Like if we don't get good grades, we're shamed. If we embarrass our families in any way, we get shamed. Like I can't count how many times I've been slapped across the face.
Because there's a sense of family, right? So if we compare it to, and this is the thing about Hispanics in the education system, that's not a priority.
Yeah.
That's the reason. It's not that they're any less intelligent or.
No, it's just where you put your time.
Yeah, it's just in Mexican and Hispanic culture, education's cool, but you got to work. Like work is the
like
brown
actual labor.
Brown people love or are attracted or I don't know, they're hardworking because I think that's all they have. Like really, like they ultimately.
But also, is it an enjoyment?
I don't know if it's an enjoyment, but there is I understand them to have a sense of pride for having 3 jobs. I have 3 jobs. Like I work. Like, bro, I work. Work is such an important thing in the Hispanic community. Like,
well,
if you don't have a job,
you're the hardest worker I know. I mean, I don't have a lot of Hispanic friends, I guess, but now that I think about it,
and bear with me, but I broke it down. I broke it down the other day, or I've been developing this kind of, I don't know if it's a mythology in my head, but kind of like a figure out a way of the reason we are the way we are. And then tell me if you think I'm off anyway. Okay. So, it can sound wrong, right? Because you can be, I'm going to go like, so black people, right?
Yeah.
African Americans, I don't know the correct term to use it.
Black, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, so what's going on? Well, it's a family thing. Like, why is it 70% of single mothers are black? Or 70% of mothers in
black women,
are
black
single mothers. 70%.
Yeah, it's really high.
That's insane.
It's a problem.
That's a crazy number. 70% of anything.
Yeah.
Is way too much, right?
Yes.
Single mothers in that community. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but when do you see like an Asian, kind of like a vagabond or like asking for money? You know, like
you don't.
You know, and then what you
shame them away.
What you see is you see the white person asking for $1, and then you see the Mexican selling flowers.
Right. That's true. That is true.
So what is happening? See what I'm saying? There's I think people are attracted to living and perpetuating their own stereotypes.
Yeah.
And it's become such a way of life that it just moves on from generation to generation.
You know, I had an interesting conversation today with a guy who he's a black man, and we always get into kind of racial discussions, and he's always very interesting for me to have conversations with. And one thing he mentioned about why he feels like blacks are held back, you know, in society, and why there's the lack of progress or not as fast as other minority groups, right? Is he was saying that he thinks it comes down to the generational knowledge that is passed down, right? So like he says he's now 39 years old and he just now learned about home equity and buying a home and getting a mortgage. Like he just now learned it. And he was like, you know, my mom didn't teach me this and her mom didn't teach her that. There was no passing down of this idea even of get a job and go buy a house. Like that was never said in his home. So his grandmother didn't have an education at all. His mom did become a nurse, but even though she got an education, became a nurse, she still never was like, and next step is we buy a house. Yeah. And then the next step is, you know, we try to get out of this neighborhood or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So he was saying like, there's a thing about generational knowledge that is passed down. And when I thought about that, I thought, you know, so like I basically have started my own business at this point and I put in a shit ton of time. I mean, I work nonstop. But where my generational knowledge is that I watched both of my parents start businesses of their own. And I watched how hard they had to work in order to get that done. And it wasn't easy. It didn't come easy. It was stressful. We had to eat at grandma and grandpa's house because we couldn't afford food, you know, and it was like that for years until their businesses finally broke. So you learn these things just by being around it or being told, you know, or something, right? And then when you get older, you have a frame of reference. So you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to start my own business. So when I decided, okay, I'm going to launch the show and start my own business, I knew going into it what I was asking of myself and how much time and effort, how long it would take to build, all of that. I had a frame of reference. But if you have no frame of reference and you start to try to do something, embark on something, then you might get discouraged really easily because you don't realize, you're thinking, oh, no, this must be impossible. I must be doing it wrong. It's not working. And you give up, right? When somebody like myself, I saw with my own eyes how hard it was. So I'm like, oh, don't give up. Now, you know, it's like, this is normal. But if you don't know it's normal, so that's kind of like generational knowledge in everything. So like Asian culture, for example, education is a generationally knowledge. Asians have been taught to learn since the time of Confucius. It was very thousands of years. Asians have been learning. It was ingrained in the culture of study, and that was passed down generation to generation. That your main goal in life as a kid, like we weren't allowed to go outside to play. We weren't allowed to. You know, I watched, especially my cousins. I was lucky to be raised by my white side of the family, so I had a little bit more of a normal, I feel like, well-rounded upbringing. But I watched my cousins who weren't allowed to go outside. They never went to friends' birthday parties. They weren't allowed to go and do anything except stay inside and study.
Yeah.
And that was like, your time as a child is not about having fun.
Yeah.
You have fun when you're an adult and you make money as an engineer.
Right.
That's when you get to finally have fun.
Yeah.
But you don't have fun as a kid. You work. Right? You study.
Yeah.
And it was like, and then, you never see like Asian kids going and get side jobs when they're 16.
Right.
Like they don't go and get after school jobs.
Yeah.
No, because their parents are like, get your ass home and study. You're going to become an engineer.
That's the focus.
Yeah, that's the.
But, and I like to pride myself in being practical, and sometimes it can sound like I'm not unsympathetic. Because to me, it's just because, like, so you're like, the reason the black people are being held down is because of the past knowledge. But to me, it's like, that knowledge is not being hidden from you. You can attain at any time. You can go. That knowledge. They're not hiding. They're not. What do you?
No, because
Kim,
how are
in
you going to learn that?
2019.
No, but like, where are you going to learn that? Like, where are you going to learn? That's stuff that's only taught to you in your home.
But that's self-built.
Well, I don't know.
That's not a white guy keeping you from learning that. That's your mom and your dad and your grandpa.
Yeah, but
they're keeping them. So it's a.
But how else would they know?
So I wouldn't. Maybe I'm focusing on the wrong part, but I wouldn't. They're not holding you down. They're not. The black people are being held down. It bothers me because either black people are kings and queens and goddesses, and the black man is God, or you have absolutely no power. It has to be one or the other. You can't be like the black man is God and the black man is, and then be like, oh, but white people keep holding us down. It doesn't work like that. At some point, you have to start taking responsibility.
No, I agree with that. I agree.
And I don't think that particular group does enough of that. Example. And I'll bring it back to hip hop.
Yeah.
Nipsey Hussle just got shot and killed.
Yeah.
By a black gang member was shot by a black gang member, and somehow they're trying to say it's white people's fault. So to me, that's a big thing or not? It was.
Are they really saying that?
Yeah, it's a conspiracy. So now if you go in there, they'll see
I haven't been keeping up.
And then in hip hop, it's going to be a different vibe than what you're involved in, right?
Yeah.
But the word is that from the beginning, it was an Illuminati hit.
Oh shit!
Because Nipsey Hussle, and look, if the circumstances feed to it. You seen the video? Have you seen the video of Nipsey Hussle being shot?
No, I don't like to watch that stuff.
It's cold. It's cold video. Like the group of gentlemen are standing by a car. A guy walks up. No more than 3 seconds, starts shooting. So he was there to kill Nipsey.
Yeah.
Shoots 2 people. Nipsey turns around. You can see him say something to him on the floor. Guy comes back, shoots him again.
Shit.
Comes back a 3rd time and tries to kick Nipsey in the head.
Oh, geez.
No lie, and then runs away. So this gentleman, that guy was there. He was there to kill Nipsey. It was obviously personal. You could see like he made sure he was dead, and then like try to disrespect him afterwards. Like it seemed like a gang thing to me, right?
Yeah.
But somehow it's white people because it's their fault. And this whole thing of like we're so held down by the white man. What's the point? Like they send their kids out with this message of like, you have a target on your back.
Right, yeah.
So when you start off playing any game with the mentality of everyone is going to come after me, you're not going to. That game is going to be super hard for you to succeed because in reality, it's not
perception.
It's not personal.
Right.
It's not. It's not personal. It's not. They don't. The cops don't dislike you because you're black. They dislike you because you're not listening. You're not paying attention. You're not listening to the demands. You're not listening to commands. And the minute you start doing that to any cop, you stop being black, white, purple. You're just a thing that's not following my authority.
Right.
And I'm going to take you down. You see it time and time again. A white cop will beat up a white dude just as fast.
Yeah. Well, actually, in my conversation with that gentleman today, we got into that specifically because, I grew up in Idaho, which is very, very white. And when I was in driver's ed, so this was like mid 90s to late 90s. I'm revealing my age. But in the mid to late 90s, we had a huge epidemic in Idaho of cops shooting unarmed drivers. So they would pull people over and then they would just shoot them dead. I mean, they would, think something was going on, and that's why they always have an excuse as to why they would shoot them. But they were shooting at, and you can look this data up. It was the highest rate of cops shooting in the nation at the time. It was an epidemic. It was in Idaho, and it was white cops shooting white people. So when I was in driver's ed, this was like a hyper, people were very aware of this. So they taught us in driver's ed, like, okay, If you get pulled over, it's very, 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 very important. You never talk back to the cops. You keep both hands on the wheel. When he asks for your registration, if it's in the glove compartment, you say, "Officer, my registration and insurance is in the glove compartment. Can I reach my right hand over to open the glove compartment to get this out?" I mean, they taught us this, and they were like, "Do not mess up because you'll get shot if you don't follow these directions specifically."
Yeah.
And so it was drilled into us, white kids, I'm half Asian, but everybody else was white. It was drilled into all of us. Like, this is how you have to behave because cops are dangerous.
And what it's become is a mixed diagnosis of the problem. So
right.
then
They're aggressive.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah,
it's a policeman form. In the
it has nothing to do with color of skin. It's cops.
100%. The example I give people is if one cop shoots at someone, all the other cops present have to shoot back.
Yeah.
And I ask people, why do you think that is? And I tell them, it's because that way they can't tell which cop shot.
Right. They have a system, and they shoot until their gun is empty.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Why, if there's 5 cops present, there's one dude, why do they need 45 bullets flying at this car? They don't need that. It's a cultural thing.
Right.
So when you misdiagnose the problem as being, hey, personalizing it again, right?
Yeah.
It's because I'm black.
Right.
You don't, then now the issue, the true problem is not being looked at.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So now you have a cop who, think about the mentality it takes to become a police officer, right?
Right.
Now
you have to want some power.
And that
control.
person chooses to do it in South Central LA.
Yeah.
So he understands the risk that he's at. He understands the authority he represents. So this is a mentality. Think about all that going on. Now, this guy pulls you over and he tells you to get out of your car. But in your mind, your mom at home has always raised you to say, cops are against you. They hate you from the beginning. They're here to kill you. You're already going to approach that guy with that mentality.
Yeah, right. You're going to think he's against you.
See what I'm saying?
He's
so
enemy.
It's a cultural thing that started way back when you were 2.
Right.
And you were raised, now that you're 24, you're stopped at the stoplight. The cop is asking you in his right lawful authority, turn the car off, give me your, I don't know what I got to do, but whatever it is, now you're not a black man. You're a suspect.
Right.
You're a perp.
Right.
Who's not listening to my demands. And until you do, that's when it will always escalate.
Well, and also people don't have everybody's just themselves, and nobody has the experience of somebody else. So whenever I hear stories, I always think like, I mean, I'm a woman. I get it. Like, how do you think they treat me? Like, what are you thinking my experience is when a cop pulls me over? Do you think they're friendly? Because they're not, they're hostile. They're looking at me like I'm a suspect too. And I'm a woman that's mixed race. Like they don't treat me with respect. Are you kidding me?
The culture in the police is not, I think has become, and I don't know if it ever wasn't, it's you against them.
Yeah.
The citizens they're not citizens. They approach a vehicle with the idea that you might have a gun.
Right. Well, yeah.
Right?
And that's why in Idaho there was such a problem with the cops shooting the people.
Yeah.
Because Idaho has a big gun culture.
Yeah.
So it was more, it had nothing to do with race, obviously, because it was whites on whites, but it was more about the fear the cops were feeling because everybody could open carry in Idaho.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they were afraid that if they were approaching a car, anytime anybody would reach for anything, that they were reaching for their gun.
Yeah. And what I tell people is you can't fix racism. You cannot avoid and you cannot stop a racist person signing up to be a police officer. You can't stop that. But what you can do is fix police culture by certain laws and certain regulations, maybe the way
training.
The training, and also who you're allowing to become cops. It should be difficult to become a cop.
Right.
It should be a hard thing. It should be a process, right? So all I'm saying is when you start to misdiagnose and taking in everything like it's focused on you,
right?
You're not going to fix the problem,
right? And that's what I always focus on, even with my own show. And I get a lot of shit for it, to be honest with you. I get a lot of backlash. A lot of people that they call me alt-right, like I'm on the alt-right or I'm a right-winger, and I'm like, I'm so firmly on the left, like But I get these criticisms because I say, I'm seeking the truth, because the truth is how we're going to correct problems. Right? Like if we are misdiagnosing, like you say, problems, we're never going to solve them.
Right.
We have to be honest about the reality. Yeah. And if we can be honest about the reality, then we can actually make progress. But we can't make progress if the narratives are fake.
100%.
And then we're sitting there trying to fix like a symptom or something that's,
It is a problem. It's a problem, but it's not the problem, and that's your problem. That, you know what I mean? The fact that because racism, it is a problem. I get it. I understand it. Now, do they feed it and give it this kind of almost I want to say like a life of its own? Like racism is almost like what? So when it comes to you're saying the Asian culture is very focused on education.
Very.
But what they're really focused on is preservation. Like really, right? Isn't that really ultimately like the Japanese people or the Chinese people will live? Like we will move on and we will exist. And America doesn't have that.
Yeah, it's very much about like parents will sacrifice everything for their children, which is actually, being mixed race, actually, I have an interesting vantage point because I see intimately two different races.
Sure.
And others, see one race and then they kind of observe another race. But I actually intimately have a white vantage point and an Asian vantage point.
Interesting.
And I can tell you that the way Asians sacrifice for their children is unmatched by whites. Now, I don't know about Hispanics or blacks because I don't have that unique vantage point. I can just guess.
Can say.
For whites and Asians, I know for sure because I'm in the cultures.
Well, I mean, look what
whites will buy themselves cars and homes with pools.
Yeah.
And they'll be selfish before they will sacrifice for their children. They're very much like, well, I want the American dream.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go get that. Whereas Asians will like totally sacrifice.
But it's also very much like that is the way America, like that's like you're saying, they want the American, like that's America. Like that's you.
It's white. It's white culture America because Asian culture America is different.
Yeah.
And so that the difference there is, like my Asian family will 100% sacrifice. Like they will literally sell their home for their kid to go to college.
Yeah.
It's like you never would find that in any
That's
other
crazy.
family. Like they'd be like, well, I guess you're going to have to take out loans, or you're not going. I guess you're not going. Right. But Asian families will literally like uproot themselves and they'll say, well, shit, we need to send our kid to college. It costs us much money. Well, our home has that much money in it, so let's sell it. And the parents will go and live in squalor in order to give their kids that opportunity because the Asian mentality, kind of like what we just talked about with Buddhists and the sacrificing for ancestors, it is this belief fundamentally that you are your lineage.
Yeah.
Your lineage is important.
Yeah.
Your ancestors and your future.
Yeah.
And that it's almost like you as a person live in the past and in the future through each other in your family.
Yeah.
And that's why family is so important. And it's this, you yourself will sacrifice for your child because your child is basically you. And your child's child is basically you.
If it's not a representation of you, that's why the family name is so important. Like,
and then
you
that's
bring
why there's
shame to your family.
Yeah.
Such an important survival mechanism shame is.
Well, it works.
It is a necessary evil to provide a real society. The minute the society decides that shame is not a thing now, that's the moment that it all comes to shit. Because when you have no shame. When you have no shame in going around and perpetrating and displaying and like living out stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
Because of personal, like a Tyler Perry or whatever, right? Like every single black stereotype is represented in those movies. To me, it just looks like the black exploitation films,
right?
But except it's a black person that's directing them and filming them and acting in them,
right?
And I've asked black friends of mine. I'm like, I'll tell them like, dude, how do you feel about? Like I told them, I'm glad Black Panther is out because the black community has like a positive, black African American like hero in person they can look up to. African, very African, right?
They're not Americans.
The black community has a black superhero now.
Yeah.
The black community has a black superhero. I just hope they steer away from Tyler Perry movies.
Yeah.
Like I put that on Twitter, right? I got some shit for it. Like, you wouldn't understand. You're not black. You don't get it.
Yeah.
But I'm telling them, at the end of the day, dude, it's still your worst stereotypes.
Yeah.
Being profited off just that happens to go into the pocket of a black guy. There's no difference.
Right.
So when you lose.
Role models are important.
Yeah.
Role models are very important.
But what we all do is we put these people up on these pedestals because they can dance good. And it turns out, hey, R. Kelly's a child rapist. No, Michael Jackson, but whatever it is, like we put people up to be these godlike figures when really they're just dudes.
Bill Cosby was the worst.
Even like Kevin Spacey. amazing, incredible actor. Oh, out of nowhere, all these things came out. But I'm saying we put celebrities up into these levels of godlike.
Yeah.
That when they turn out to be just like dicks and people and ass, it's such a big shock. So when you bet so many chips on it as a community,
right,
on Bill Cosby,
right, and then he turns out to be a serial rapist,
you have to stop looking for superheroes everywhere, and you have to kind of start being your own superhero.
Well, that's like Asian culture, don't have. Oh, okay. Asian culture doesn't really have that because Asians don't value at all the Hollywood scene, music.
I was going to say there's no search for it.
No.
For the same reason that the Hispanics, okay, the black community is super loud, and I don't mean like in a movie theater. I mean like they're a loud community.
Yeah.
They will speak out. But Asians not so much.
No, not at all.
And we're talking about America.
Right.
Hispanics. Donald Trump wants to build a fucking wall and keep everybody out. There's still no peep out of Hispanic culture.
Right.
Why?
I don't know why.
The focus isn't to be in the main light. We're not looking for our next superhero.
But
we're not looking
the history is different there. I don't think it's necessarily a fair comparison because I do think that the history of Black Americans is very different than the history of like Asian and Hispanic Americans, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration.
Sure, there's specifics, but at one point the Asians built the railroads and they were treated very badly.
Yeah.
At one point, Hispanics were treated bad.
Right.
At one point, but so like the we all have in common that we're all treated badly by the white person, but the ones that keep complaining to the point of this is what we'll do, like this is how we'll fix it, is by complaining, not looking, not fixing, not kind of self-reflecting in our own communities.
Well, I think there does have to be that, right? We have reached a point, I do think, that people do have to take responsibility, right?
Yeah.
That it needs to be there. But I do still think that there is a legacy. Now, where I take an issue with the conversations is that, whenever I ask, okay, look, like, let's fix this. I get it. You feel held back. I want to help you. I want to fix this. What do you want? What can we do? The response I often get is, you need to listen. You need to stop and be quiet and listen, right? And then the other one is, and you need to accept your history. You need to realize what you did to me, right? And I'm sitting there like, yeah, but I didn't do anything to you.
Right.
For one, my family just got here.
Yep.
On both sides, my Danish family and my Vietnamese side.
Yeah.
I'm the first one born here on my Vietnamese side.
Yeah.
I'm literally the first one born on this soil on my mom's side. And on my dad's side, my great grandfather came from Denmark. I mean, in 1910, my family came here. So they weren't involved, right? Yeah. So to tell me I have to learn, be quiet and listen, and then, accept my history, my racist history. And it's like, that wasn't a part of my family journey at all. So it automatically creates this animosity for people, when people are being accused of having a history of racism that they didn't have, it feels very unfair, right? Mm-hmm. And it feels like, and then on top of it, it's like, but that's not a solution. Like, okay, so let's just say, hypothetically, I sit here and I listen, and then I say, okay, I have a racist history, I'm a racist. I don't know, like, now what? How are we now solving the problem? We're not.
And again, it sounds like you're unsympathetic when you start to point out the truth
right,
of things.
Right, it does sound unsympathetic.
But the truth is, maybe sympathy is not what you need right now. What you need is to start looking at why, like, there's no one kills more black kids than other black kids. Like, no one does that. Right. There's not cops busting in doors at 2:00 in the morning shooting black people. Right. That doesn't happen. So when you want to start talking about, hey, these cops killed this one guy, okay, but you just had 6 murders of other black open black. Like, what are you talking about?
Which is kind of why the cops are going in hyper. Where
are the numbers? If you're talking about change, you don't attach the one cop who shot the one kid. How about the gang member who's killed 3 or 5 of them? They're all, I'm saying, like, you have to start and stop blaming people and say, hey, maybe we can
mix, though. I think it's a mix, but the problem that I have is that this whole notion of it's white man's fault.
Exactly.
And there is no personal responsibility, except there are a group of minority Black leaders who are speaking out, who are saying, hey, that's not working.
But even when, do you remember, and again, we'll talk about Bill Cosby, before all this, he had a speech he gave, I think, out of Philadelphia or Chicago or something like that. And he got shit from the black community because of the things he said.
Yeah.
You need to, pull your pants up. You need to stop calling each other
bootstraps.
You need to stop calling each other the N-word. You need to start doing all these things, which is like, yeah, just do all that. That's exactly, he got shit for that.
Yeah. And I do think there is truth to that, right? Like one thing about the Asian culture that people don't realize is, whenever I have conversations with people that are saying, oh, but Asians are different because Asians had privilege and Asians were and it's like, no, the thing that Asians did was that they assimilated hard. And I mean hard, like took on new names. Like, what is my mom's name? Her name is Haumti Tuwin. Okay. No, what does she go by? Jackie. Right? Like, my aunt Coop goes by Lisa.
Yeah.
They just took on white sounding names. They wouldn't teach any of us kids the native language because they were afraid we would have accents.
Was this like a certain generation of Asians that did
it's
that?
All,
was it like the
all
70s
Asians
or the
that come
60s
here.
Or?
No, this is pretty true. This is legitimately true amongst all Asian groups. From India, when you're looking at East Asian, it's a little bit different. Or West Asians, it's a little bit different than East Asians. But I would say like Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, for sure those groups didn't even teach their children the language because they were afraid of an accent.
Yeah.
They were afraid of, they knew that they were being held back personally because they spoke funny, quote unquote funny, right? Because they had accents. They understood that was holding them back in business and that was holding them back in life, that they were being discriminated against for not sounding like the white man.
Yeah.
So they made it a point to not teach any of us the language. They made it a point to make us sound as white as possible. And they gave all of us white names. And that's just like what the community did, was they were like, okay, strategize. It's time to strategize. Like, we're here. And what are we going to do? We're going to make sure that we prosper. So we're going to make sure our kids sound like the white guy, and our kids go to college, and our kids study hard, and our kids become engineers and doctors. Those are your only two choices. Maybe a lawyer, maybe, depending on the family. And that's that's it. And it was a very, very strict, assimilate hard. You don't have this other culture, don't just do what the white guy does and win the game. And that is how, Asians kind of gamed the system in that way, where they were like, this is how we do it.
But there was self-reflection, and there was kind of like, hey.
Well, there's also not the history. I think that, with Black Americans and the United States, it's an abusive relationship. So the way that I liken it is like, look, you could take 2 women or 3 women, like, okay, put 3 women in a room, okay? And you give all 3 women the exact same opportunities in front of them. But one woman was told from the time she was a little girl by her dad that she was worth shit. And she grew up with this belief, and her dad beat her up, and her dad told her she was worth shit. And then she got a boyfriend who did the same thing to her. And then she got another boyfriend when she finally got the courage to leave that boyfriend. She got another boyfriend who did the same shit to her, right? And so for her, she's suffering with some serious internal conflicts that make it difficult for her to excel and succeed even when given the same opportunities as 2 other women. There's like a mental abuse that has happened that is real. And, we see this on the individual level with children that have been abused, with women that have been abused, and I believe with the entire Black community that has been abused. So we do have to take these things into consideration. But it's a matter of, okay, but even with all of that, like I've worked with, in my previous career, I did a lot of relationship stuff. So I've worked with many, many, many women who've been abused. It is still very, very difficult even to break them from that cycle. It's almost impossible. And it is, unfortunately, she has a greater struggle to get over, but it does have to be her that does it. I can't get her out of her abusive relationship. And then she ultimately has to make the choice not to return. Right? She ultimately has to choose to date somebody who treats her well, even if she's not sexually attracted to that person, because the only guy that turns her on now is the guy that beats the shit out of her. Right? So she has to make these conscious efforts to make a change so that her children don't grow up with that same abuse.
And that's all I'm saying. Is when
but
you
that's
have,
hard. I mean, it's like all you're saying, but it's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard.
but I understand it. Easier said than done.
It is easier said than
but
done. Yeah.
again, there's misdiagnosis, and there's also refusal of accepting things. And when you start to blame all your
it'd be like one of these women saying all men.
Because of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like she's been abused, and so now she's saying, it's men.
Well, and then that woman turns to her kid and tells her, hey, all men are after you.
Right.
All men and then the daughter will do that to the next one.
Right. Even if the daughter's never experienced abuse.
Yeah.
And has never been hit by a man.
Now she's on her toes. She's wondering what's going on.
She thinks men are shit.
So it's a crazy cycle. There's a lot involved. All I'm saying is, if you don't have the self-reflection, the part of like, okay, this is what I'm responsible for. I understand the history of it. I understand the situation. But there does come a time when it's like, hey, as a people, we need to figure out what the fuck we're doing. When your murder rate in Chicago is what it is, you have to stop and say, hey, what the fuck is happening?
Right.
Can we police as a people? So the thing about Nipsey Hussle dying, it brought all these LA gangs together, and they all walked the streets together. Blood, Crips, Essays, whatever. And it was a unity behind that. I'm hoping that they will continue this, and it'll be a catalyst for change.
Well, what was really tragic about his death, is that he was a guy who made it and then wanted to go back to his neighborhood to try to help his neighborhood out, only to be turned on by people
his
in his
neighborhood.
Own, right. Which is why he was initially even wanting to go to help the neighborhood, right? Was to try to end what had ultimately happened to him at a very young age.
Yeah.
And that is really, really tragic. And it is why so many decide to just up and leave. Whereas, like, for example, in the Asian community, so when my family got here, you don't even know how many times we've been robbed at gunpoint. And because like this area that we're in right now was in a really bad area when I was a kid growing up.
Really?
I mean, we got robbed all the time. My grandmother, oh man, she got home invaded. She was tied up, beat the shit out of.
Who was doing these robberies?
Vietnamese on Vietnamese. Wow. It was Vietnamese on Vietnamese crime because they were poor. So it was like, Vietnamese refugees had come over and none of them had anything.
Oh, so they just took the
right. So then you would get these gangs that would rise up, and they were really vicious, and they would go and they would home invade and like I said, my grandmother was home invaded, and they went into her home. She was 70 years old, and they tied her up and they beat her up for hours, and they took all of her stuff for hours.
Jesus Christ.
And how many times I've come home to a robbed house that, and they would slash the carpets and tear up the walls. And I mean, that was a regular occurrence for me growing up. That was normal. It was not a surprise to come home and see your house thrashed. So that was because our community was poor and didn't have any money. And when people don't have money, they're desperate.
Yeah.
And they, but ultimately what happened was through time, the Vietnamese community over 30 years, and it took 30 years, it wasn't overnight, although that's pretty fast even then. The kids went to school, right? Like my generation were taught to, we went to school. We spoke like white people. We had white people names, even though my name's Kim, which is the Vietnamese name. But, so the community eventually got infused with more money, and we came back. It wasn't like we ever left. I mean, I'm still here. I'm still here in the hood, but the hood changed.
Yeah.
And it's no longer a bad area.
Yeah.
I mean, Westminster was growing up. I mean, I don't know. You were around in this area, weren't you?
Yeah.
Back in the 80s.
No, not yet.
Oh, you weren't. But it was a bad area.
Yeah.
And now it's not a bad area.
Right.
And so that's just when people do
so it's
come
possible.
back. Yeah, it is possible to come back and to rebuild, but your community does have to shame the ones that are bad and behaving badly.
And you have to stop.
You have to be willing to turn them in.
You also don't impede change. I feel that and it sounds so bad, but I also feel that a lot of these communities impede the change. They don't. They want to hold on to their stereotypes so much because it's become a piece of their personality
identity or culture.
That. Like, why, dude?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Don't you want to change? When I get my friends bitching and complaining, and I hear you, I get it. Okay, but when you start complaining about how Echo Park used to be the super ghetto place, but now it's filled with that, now it's not. Mm-hmm. And you're complaining about that. You're complaining that the gangs are gone. You're complaining that you don't have to worry about walking down the street.
Well, because they got pushed out.
Okay.
Right.
Well, they shouldn't be around anyways. Can we?
Right.
Right.
Whereas like the Vietnamese community, we stayed. Westminster, this area, stayed Vietnamese.
But you're not a gang. So I'm saying like gangs aren't supposed to be around, right? It's not.
Right.
So when they leave, isn't that supposed to be like, yes, we got rid of our gang issue? Like, no, it's like they become a piece of the, like woven into the society. And that's a problem. When Hispanics, when your gangs are woven into who you are as a people, and so it's in your movies and it's the way you talk and it's how you dress. You might not be in a gang, but you dress like when it's become woven. You need to stop and say, is this beneficial?
Yeah.
It's
and
not.
That's like the thing that I think is so different about Asian culture, you know. And I keep talking about Asian culture because it's what I know. But what's different is the gangs were real, the gangs were violent, but they got shamed out. Like, and I'll reveal this, you know, my mom went to prison. So I'm not somebody that just like had this whole privileged life of, it's like I grew up with the robberies, the home invasions, and I had a parent go to prison.
Yeah.
So, I get it.
Yeah.
But when my mom went to prison, and now I'm feeling the shame even saying it, because it's like, oh God, I shouldn't say this out loud, because then, it's out there and it's public and it's like Asian shame is real. And if my family found out that I was talking about this, I would be in such huge trouble. Yeah. I would be in such huge trouble. Yeah. But, we never said she went to prison. We lied, right? And we said, oh, she was in the hospital or she had something, and then when she came back, the family like shamed her. I mean, the family was like,
listen, you need to keep yourself in check as an adult on your everyday life.
Right.
And as a society, as a group of, you got to keep yourself in check. The minute you start telling people you only live once, the minute you start telling people it's not because of you, it's because they hate you.
Yeah.
The minute your kid gets a bad grade, you're not mad at the kid, you're mad at the teacher that gave them the bad grade.
Yeah.
The minute that starts happening, you need to stop and realize, because what's going to happen is it's just going to continue. It's going to snowball into these issues that I don't know how you fix now. I don't know how long it will take to fix the homeless situation in California.
Yeah.
It's an epidemic and we seem to be doing absolutely nothing seriously about it.
Right.
So when we need to accept the issue, the problem, and try to fix the problem and not attach emotions and, it's personal kind of thing. And that's all I'm saying. That's all I want people to kind of just be more practical with life. Stop assuming everything is about you and that you're. And first,
well,
stop
that's
assuming
like
you're
a natural thing, right? Like when you're at work, for example, and this is what I always relate it to, is like when you're at work, you're always thinking your coworker is somehow getting better treatment than you.
Right.
Like you sit there and you wonder, like, are they getting paid more?
Yeah.
Are they getting something I'm not? Right. It's a natural instinct to think that your neighbor is always doing better than you or getting some special treatment that you're not getting, and that's a pretty natural thing. So I think within even cultures, there is a tendency with certain cultures to feel that way.
Yeah.
Asian culture doesn't do that. I mean, they're literally head to the ground, don't give a shit about anybody else.
Yeah.
That's like the Asian mentality.
And it truly is. So that's why when you watch like a Brinks commercial, usually the people that are robbing the house will be Asian and white. Because you're not going to put a black guy as a thief, right? You're not going to put a black guy as someone who breaks into, because then you'll get a bunch of letters from black community. But you put an Asian and a white, they're winning. So they don't care. Well, you can put them up and be whatever it is. So it's just, the minute we start attaching our feelings to like, also Kim, biological shit. So like I feel I identify as a female, so I'm going to need a new bathroom. And it's like, you feel this way, but biologically you have this urge or this need, which is to go to the restroom.
Right.
So biologically, we've designed bathrooms specially for your needs.
Right.
You're a male, you have these needs. You're a female, you get booths, you get stable, that's
right.
So why do your feelings have to play into any of this?
Well, like with that, I don't really care, right? Because like, if a trans...
It's the part of the shaming and the moral, Kim, that I know you know why do I, but I'm saying is that's a part of shame that you need to kind of, you need to be like, look, I'm sorry, but your feelings aren't important in the determination of which restroom to you. Like that shouldn't have feelings attached to it.
Well, I mean, I just don't. Yeah, I mean, I guess with that, I don't really give a shit what bathroom you use. Like do whatever you want to do.
Until you have a dude walk in there while you're using the restroom. Like that's not a thing for you. That's not going to be.
No, if it were normal, it's just not normal in society, right? We're used to having segregated bathrooms between men and women,
right? Because the bathrooms have different uses. Like there's different things in them.
But they don't have to, right? I mean, they could. The only thing is that I wouldn't want to use a restroom like it would just be awkward on dates, right? Because I wouldn't want to go to the bathroom and then my date walks into the same bathroom.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, oh,
Right.
that would be awkward. I mean, I do enjoy having a separate space.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really care. Like, use whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, they're all public and anybody's walking in, and it's not like they either need to be totally private or they're just totally public. And if it's male or female, I guess use whatever bathroom you want. I don't really care. I mean, I would say use what you feel comfortable and what you think other people are going to feel comfortable.
But I think
I don't need to know what your
Forget the fact that
is.
it's a bathroom. Forget the fact that it's a bathroom. All I'm saying is the attachment of feelings to things is an issue in this particular society we live in. The feelings are attached to so many things that should not be attached to, because ultimately it is like, do you yes or no, up or down? Like, well, I feel that down should be up because my people, like, whatever. Your feelings are not taken into consideration.
Yeah, for certain things, for sure. Like, for certain things, I definitely think it's like we have to be a little bit more, like, for example, the airlines, they want to kind of remove gender. And I'm like, you can't, I mean, disasters happen, like natural disasters and accidents happen, and you have to know who you're looking for. You have to, like, have some idea of, like,
I love it when it comes to bite someone in the ass, when they, like, do all these things and it just turns out to be, like, the worst thing they could have done for the situation. Right. Like, I just love when society does that to itself. Because in that case, who are we looking for?
Well, you can't describe their gender. You're not allowed to describe their color. You're not allowed to describe anything. So you're just, like, looking for a person.
It's a carbon-based
right. There's a living,
individual
biological being.
Did you just assume my like, see, this is what I'm talking about. And look, Kim, okay, but let's come down the ladder a little bit. You have a magic wand.
Yeah.
Okay. You wave it. What would you like to see happen in politics? Like, if you, Kim, could wave this wand, what would it look like to you?
Well, I want a fair and equitable society. That doesn't mean equal results. And I think people get confused with that. Because I think what happens now is people are wanting to see equality. And I don't necessarily think that that's what we should be aiming for.
Right.
We should be aiming for a fair and equitable society, but not necessarily equality in society.
100%.
So that is like, we should be somewhat of a meritocracy, right? Where you're all given the same resources, but the results might not end up being equal the way you want, right? Like, no matter how we slice it as women, for example, if we go head to head with men in sports, we're not going to beat them, and we're not going to have an equitable shake in the sports arena if we're being forced to compete directly with men.
Yeah,
it's not going to be 50% women, 50% men. If we're making a basketball team and we're like, anybody can try out, anybody, and then like half the women show up and half the men show up, and we're expecting equal results, not going to happen, right? The men are all going to beat us out. There might be like one anomaly female that makes the team.
Yeah.
But the rest are all going to be dudes, right?
Yeah.
So that's, but having the shot is the fair and equitable society. The equality is a little bit different.
But I think that gets, okay, like yesterday I'm watching this thing called Titan Games. And they're contestants, are kind of like American Gladiator type thing. And she's the first black woman in NASCAR to be in a crew pit.
Yeah.
And she goes, she's making history, and she's doing. And I'm thinking, really? She's breaking down the walls for every other black female that wants to be in NASCAR.
Not,
really?
Right.
She's really. And I turned to my wife, and she's like, "You don't know how many there are." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure." There's just like kicking down the door. African American females are kicking down the door to be part of this pick. Like, just because you're the first of something doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Like the floodgates have opened, and now all these women are like wanting to do that job.
But the TV was portraying her as this. Like trailblazer, like, oh, she's the first black woman in it. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, this is why I like Europe a lot, because, like Germany, for example, is such an interesting case, because Germany was just pummeled in World War II, right?
Well, rightfully so.
Yeah, right. I mean, rightfully so.
Rightfully.
Yeah, they were demolished.
To everybody's, yeah.
But what was interesting about it was
Two world wars.
Yeah, they were responsible for both. What's crazy is they've been able to take over Europe even now without starting a war. They now own Europe.
I'll interrupt real quick. So they ask her, what's the chancellor?
Angela Merkel.
They go. She goes, yeah. So now with all the chaos and the Brexit and all that stuff, the European countries are looking for the country to take action.
It's like, finally now Germany, it's our moment.
She even herself goes, But we all know what happens every time Germany. Like she was genuinely like, I'm not gonna do it. Like I was. She didn't say I'm gonna step out. She goes.
They already have.
But we all know what happens when every time.
They honestly already have. They already have. Well, and all the rest of Europe all knows.
They just sent those people seem to have a certain. They're kind of like our golem. Whereas that makes sense. Like they're going to play a role in our lives that
whether you like it or not.
It's a
the
weird.
Germans are here to stay.
It's a weird thing, right? That Germany is such a
They're very regimented people.
Yeah.
So to me, they're very much like Asians. And my ex-boyfriend's German, and I spent a lot of time in Germany, and because he's like German. He lives in Germany, and they are extremely regimented, and they're very, very. They're like the Asian culture in a lot of ways, where it's like
tough people.
Yeah, it's like you don't have fun. You need to work, and you need to do what's necessary. Do what is necessary right now. So, but what's interesting is that Germany's been able to take over Europe even without having to start a war this time.
Right.
But
right.
So when Germany was decimated after World War II, what was really interesting about it was that they needed all hands on deck to rebuild the country. Okay, so Germany is an interesting test case in a fair and equitable society, and they've have a really great society now, because when the men came home from World War II here in the United States, what did they do? Well, all the women were like Rosie the Riveter, working on the cars, playing baseball, doing all these things, right? But when the men came home, the men were threatened by the women having the jobs. The men wanted their jobs back, so they told the women, "You belong in the kitchen. You got to get back in the kitchen." Playboy rose. So all of a sudden women became objectified. There was women being forced back into the kitchen. Church said women belonged at home. This was very much like the American narrative. Germany did not have that narrative. When the soldiers that were left of Germany were there, they were like, "Hey lady, all hands on deck. We need everybody we can get to rebuild this country. You're not going back home. You need to stay exactly where you are. You're an engineer? Perfect. We need you. You're a doctor? Great. We need you." So they needed the women to stay in those fields. They also needed blacks. They needed people of color, of not Hispanics. There's not very many Hispanics over there in Europe. But, they've got Africans. They've got Eastern Europeans. They have Middle Easterners, right? And they needed everybody to rebuild the country. Anybody who was there, they were like everybody and anybody. And because of it, it's like a country where misogyny and sexism and racism at this point in time is like null and void. They don't have it.
It's petty. It's not unnecessary.
They just don't, because they all had to equally build the country. And because they were in it together and they were building together, and everybody got a fair shake in the economy. So women were making money, blacks were making money, Middle Easterners were everybody was making money. And they were equally gaining power because they had the money equally. And now you've got a female chancellor. You've got it was hard for me when I first started dating my German boyfriend, because he had a very like I would offer to pay and he would actually accept it. He'd be like, "Yeah, okay." And I'd be like, whoa, I usually offer and you're supposed to decline.
Yeah, sure.
Right, because that's the American way.
Yeah.
But the Germans were like, yeah, of course, because women are exactly the same as men. They didn't have this whole feeling of like, oh, I'm supposed to pay the bill every time and I'm supposed to do this and that and the other.
Yeah.
Because for them, women are exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And blacks, when they describe blacks, they don't say black. They don't have a whole different culture and a whole different term. When they describe a person who's blonde and blue-eyed, they say extremely light pigmented. Right? They say extremely light pigmented hair. These are literally the translation.
Wow.
Like light pigment hair, light pigment eyes, light pigment skin.
And that means blonde eyes.
Right. And then when they talk about a black person, they say maximum pigment skin, maximum pigment hair, maximum pigment eyes. Right? Like they don't have different categories.
I'm going to use it here. Right. See how that goes here.
But it's interesting, how a society can form. And I believe it's largely economic. It has a lot to do with money and power in the system. Germany is an excellent test case of this because they were pummeled, rightfully so, had to rebuild.
So it is possible for societies to start or have a very bad...
We just need to be pummeled through war
well,
be decimated.
Well, the U.S. is a specialty case, right? And this is what people forget. Again, we've only been around like
Yeah, not long.
So to say that we've understand anything when it comes to like the true running of democracy and politics is it's not there. Like
We're teenagers.
I mean, ultimately, that's really what we are, right?
Yeah.
And then that's kind of the stage we're at. Like we're fighting ourselves, and we're not sure which way we want to go. And yes, we want to be productive, but we still want to. Like it's a weird time to be alive, and to be involved. Politics has become now that the Mueller report came out.
Yeah.
Can you see it? Do you see the difference in coverage of Donald Trump? Are you starting to see?
I've been like refusing to pay attention because it just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I don't watch mainstream news anymore just because I'm like, oh, come on, guys. Like, how long can we go on with this?
And that's CNN at this point, because before the Mueller report came out, there was a justification for being on top of Trump like that.
Constantly.
I get it.
Yeah.
But now that it's come out, they're still on top of him, and it's like your main kind of weapon, your gun. And this it's proved to be a dud, and it just It's not it.
Time to move on.
Which is a whole different thing. Like I think Mueller just didn't want to like be that dude. To say there's no collusion, okay, got it. But no obstruction of justice to him to be able
there was
to plead a case for it, to be able to plead a case for him to say, nah.
Yeah,
but
here's the thing: like obstruction and perjury and all that has happened before with every. Bill Clinton, he perjured himself.
Yeah,
and
there was a prosecution, and
he was impeached.
There was
but
this
then
whole
nothing happened.
So
and, it's like,
but so why not? Why if it's if the president is there for that? I don't understand how Mueller just didn't come back with that. It's obvious. It's there. He fired the dude investigating him.
Because it wasn't hard enough proof. And you've got to have like a smoking gun. It's got to be obvious. Like with Bill Clinton, it was obvious, okay?
Yeah.
Because there was proof on the dress of DNA. And he said, I had no sexual relations with this woman.
Yeah.
And he totally perjured himself because we found actual physical DNA evidence.
Okay.
Well, we don't have that on Trump. I mean,
you don't have physical DNA evidence, so you can't prove that he was obstructing
all you can
justice?
Do is assume why he fired Comey. You can't prove why he fired him.
People go to court with that all the time. There's all that time of like, hey, there's people that
you can get him on that.
Okay,
you can't get him on that,
and I get it.
It's not a smoking gun.
But him to be we were all waiting for it. It was gonna be the thing, right? It was gonna be.
Right.
It was gonna make the next step into impeachment. It was gonna do, and then all that momentum stopped when he's like, I couldn't really.
Well, I never really believed in the collusion, to be honest with you.
You didn't think it is kind of fantastical to think that he would actually be like held.
He's not smart enough. I mean, give me a break. Some Manchurian candidate. You got to be intelligent to be a Manchurian candidate because you're basically a spy. You're basically saying I'm a double agent.
I don't think it's that.
He's not smart.
I'm not saying he's smart. I honestly don't think it's a Manchurian candidate kind of situation. I think it's a dude who won an election he didn't think was going to win.
Right. Yeah. I agree
so
with
when
that.
he won, it was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do it. So then now Russia is like, you're going to take our help whether you like it or not, because we have this certain tape or we have this certain whatever it was that. To say there was no collusion, also there was attempted collusion everywhere.
Yeah, I mean
everywhere from Flynn to the
we do
meeting,
that everywhere too. I mean, we're constantly meddling. I mean, we meddle in every election. We collude
again on our turf.
Yeah,
it's a 9/11 thing on our shit. Like you had to come do it to our house. Like
right.
That's a whole different thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I never thought there was collusion.
You honestly never thought there was any Russian collusion?
I mean, of course, there's always a chance. And so I agreed with the investigation. Like, go ahead and look. What I didn't like was the constant narrative in the news. It was like, come on, there's so much other shit going on in the world.
Yeah, a lot of
stuff. We don't need to be focused on this. There's so much more
but
going on.
But it is a big deal when there is a possibility that your president
but it's like, let him do the
Yeah,
investigation.
let him drop.
And then just, see what happens. And now we saw what happened, right? Yeah. I mean, I never thought there was collusion. I have always thought that Russia, of course, did whatever they could.
Meddled.
To try. Yeah, why not? I mean, I'm sure China did too. I'm sure all of them have tried, just like we try.
Yeah.
Because if you're a powerful nation,
the CIA, that's what they do, right?
Right, that's what they do. That's what they do. They go around the world doing that. So of course, I'm sure Russia has their teams that do it, and I'm sure China has their teams that do it, and I'm sure Israel has their teams that do it. Everybody
but it's the constant defending of Russia from Trump that really kind of worries people. Like it's okay. Then why? Okay, why are you?
I think that was just teams. I think that's just like because the two-party system that we've talked about. When when it's like the Dodgers versus the whatever
Angels.
Yeah, the Dodgers versus the Angels, and it's this constant battle. And it's like, which team are you on? And you have to be against everything the other team says just because. Not for any real legitimate, logical reason, but just because. And so I think that's what a lot of that was.
You think so?
Yeah, I think it was just the Democrats were going hard on Russia.
So he couldn't say that, yes, it's true.
Now I think he was just like, oh, Russia's great. You know, just to like stick it to the Democrats. Even if he didn't believe any of it, he was just saying it just to be different, opposite. And I even see this with Democrats. They're constantly opposite of what Republicans say, just to be opposite, even if it's like they're actually asking for something good this time, guys. Like they're actually being honest. Believe it or not, I know it's hard to believe. And they're like, no, whatever they say, I'm opposite. It doesn't matter what it is.
Because you kind of have to be. Right? To like.
Well, they act like it. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, you kind of do have to be, because like what I see even on my show is whenever I defend anything a Republican does, I get eviscerated by left wingers that are just like, how dare you? You're on the right now. I knew you would turn. I knew you were. You're
an asset.
Right. That's what they would. They're like, think I'm a CIA plant and that I'm, I get all these weird conspiracy.
You know what you should do, Kim? You should like secretly, like you should hide like little triangles, like so that people will be like, did you guys
Illuminati?
Just trip them out.
Right.
Just trip them out. Why not? Just do that.
I already have enough people that are like crazy, thinking that I'm, something I'm not or whatever, just because I question both sides. Now, I think Republicans are way crazier. I think for sure they're just way long gone. They're far gone.
I feel anything with an alt in front of it is the wrong. Either left or right. Because, left, and then there's I love the confusion, the fact that people don't know shit. So they'll just start spewing stuff out, like the confusion of the of right being Nazis.
Yeah.
When Nazis really are just like the ultimate left.
Yeah,
like
far
it's
left.
The super far
but
left.
Really
like that's
it's
Nazis.
A circle. Actually, it's more like a quadrant. People always think of things in a linear left and right. And the
it's like one of those diagrams, right?
Right.
Like,
it's more like a diagram, or it's more like, because there is an authoritarian right and there's an authoritarian left.
Yes.
And we see this all the time, right? The authoritarian right wingers are like the Christian moral ones that are like, don't hang out with gays, don't talk to gays, don't be around them. That we make them illegal, right? Let's ban them. And then the authoritarian left is like, okay, ban anybody who says something I don't like, ban them from saying the things and thinking things and conglomerating together, like ban them because they're immoral.
And that's just on the speech side, not the economic side. It's his own thing on both sides, like the left and the right. They're like,
together.
It becomes this thing of your political beliefs become you. So anyone that attacks them is attacking you.
Right.
So that stops you from like realizing, oh, that's a good point. Hey, maybe
right.
That's absolutely right. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's why economically, you've got Republicans and Democrats who are like neo-libs and neoconservatives who are both pretty much in the same spot economically. And you've got, I always say like progressives like myself and libertarians have more in common with each other than the neo-libs and neoconservatives, I think, have more in common with each other.
They allow for things to come in every once in a while. When you're a libertarian,
progressives and libertarians are free-thinking people.
That's what I'm saying.
Typically.
That's a good idea. Maybe
right.
When left and right's like no,
they're authoritarians.
Yeah.
They're very authoritarian, and they're very much like, well, yeah, we can have Medicare for all if it makes sense, right? If they just play this game of that would be nice. That would be nice.
And we'll wrap it up, Kim. But the one thing that I don't understand is I understand them in theory. So like when they go, I'm a communist or a socialist, like I understand the definition of those words.
Right.
But I heard a good joke of a communist. So there's two communists talking, and one of them goes, the joke is about why communism doesn't work if you're a person, if you're just like a people, like a person. Right? And he goes, two communists are talking, and one of them goes, if you had two houses, would you give me one of your houses? The other communist goes, of course I'd give you two other houses. What we're supposed to do, I'd give you two houses. If you had two cars, would you give me one of your cars? He's like, yeah, I would share my car with you. Of course I would. If you had two chickens, can I have one of your chickens? He goes, no. And he goes, why not? He goes, because I have two chickens. Because I have two chickens. Like, that's why I'm not going to give it to you. It doesn't work. It's not, you can't force it. I don't understand the idea. It can only serve whoever is in charge of the communist country.
Well,
communism cannot in reality, not on paper,
No, there's actually a communist nation that is democracy. So here's the thing about economics and so there's political structures and there's economic structures. And this is where people get really confused. Is that they think that they're one and the same when really like economic structures are things like socialism, communism, capitalism. And political structures are things like monarchies, dictatorships, democracies, right?
Right.
So you actually can have a democratically elected communist system.
Yes.
And you can have democratically elected capitalism, democratic socialism, democratic communism, just like you can have dictator communism, dictator socialism, and even dictator capitalism, which we see in China right now.
Yeah.
China's a dictatorship. China's also capitalistic at this moment.
Right.
Because the dictator said so.
Yeah.
There's actually a province in India that is actually a democratic society that has democratically implemented communism.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Israel did it for a while too with the kibbutz system. They had a democratically decided upon communist system. So it does happen. It's rare, usually.
But the numbers need to be at a level that it's manageable for you to do that. When you're running Russia and you're running the U.S., it's not going to work. You can't. You have too many.
That's why we have states' rights, ideally, in the United States. We're 50 different nations.
That's why they each have their own little constitution and their own little plans. Because it's
which I'm a big supporter of.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's all supposed to fit together to make this capitalism super good. But all I'm saying is I don't understand. So now like you have like Greece and all these countries in disarray.
Yeah.
Over their political system. Venezuela, all this other shit. And it just becomes like, why repeat it? Why again? Why? And now is the time to stop the momentum. Right now, when you're on the streets and you don't have any power and you're not sure who the president, like, don't vote another socialist. Don't do that. Why?
Well, Venezuela's different. So that was us. So we destroyed Venezuela because their one resource is oil, and we wouldn't allow them to actually capitalize on their oil. And when I say capitalize, what I mean is monetize. We didn't let them monetize their oil. So what we did was we actually put embargoes on them like we did with Cuba. So we told the world, you're not allowed to lend money to Venezuela so that they can build the infrastructure to tap into their oil reserves. We actually prevented them.
But are they a terrorist country? Are they considered a terrorist?
No.
You sure?
Terrorist?
Yeah.
No.
Venezuela is there's a group of...
No, they're not considered terrorist. No.
Okay.
That would be like Iran is considered a terrorist nation.
Well, when they're actively
sponsor.
funding and stuff like that, that's a terrorist.
Yeah, not Venezuela, right?
Okay.
Iran would be one that they consider. Saudi Arabia for sure.
Yeah.
They have a lot of state-sponsored terrorism, but we don't seem to care.
Because we're going to sell them guns or we're going to do whatever it is with them.
Well, it's oil. It all has to do with oil.
Well, yeah.
But Venezuela has a huge oil reserve. It's the largest in the world.
Yeah.
The largest in the world is in Venezuela.
So we just kept them under a thumb?
Yeah, because what happened was Venezuela decided that they didn't want the U.S. capitalists to come in and actually monetize the oil.
Yeah.
Hugo Chavez in 2002 basically said that he wanted the oil was part of the land, and that the land belonged to the Venezuelan people, and he wanted the money from whatever was extracted from the land to go to the Venezuelan people, so he wanted to nationalize it.
Sounds fair.
Right, it does sound fair.
Yeah.
When the United States got wind of that, the U.S. basically said, not under our watch, and they basically put an embargo on it to where Venezuela could never nationalize and capitalize and monetize the one resource they had. So they went broke. We basically drained them to death. We basically said, we're going to put our thumb on you until you crack because you're not going to have any money for your people. So it wasn't socialism that has cracked Venezuela. They actually are extremely wealthy if we allowed them.
A lot of these countries have a lot of resources.
They have a shit ton. Venezuela would be extremely wealthy, and the fact that they wanted to give it back to the Venezuelan people is really, really admirable and the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But they weren't. Venezuela is not socialist really. So they have socialist. No economy is. This is where people get really confused.
Can't solely be.
No, right. You're always a mix. And they have capitalism in Venezuela. They're not a socialist country.
Yeah.
They're capitalist. They have capitalism too. They just wanted to socialize or nationalize really certain resources like water and oil, which is the stuff that should be nationalized.
Yeah.
Here in the United States, you know what we're doing with our water? We're capitalizing water. Water is life. You need water to drink. You can't live without water. But we've allowed in our system for the water to be monetized
That's true.
and owned by private people.
Yeah.
And it's straight from the land.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're going to have to pay a fortune. And when we start having droughts and we're starting to die off, they're going to charge you a fortune for that water that is part of the land. And you as an American should have claim to that. So Venezuela kind of had that idea. And the U.S. said, no, we don't like that idea. And we want those oil reserves to go to money-making ventures.
So do you think it's intended to be disarray from the beginning, and then America's going to step up when they're like at their last kind
No, what we're trying to do is put in our own leader that is going to allow us to
that's the other guy,
capitalize
right?
the-
That's the other guy.
Yeah, that's a guy that has been trained in the United States.
Yeah.
He was educated in the United States. He's trained in the U.S.
Yeah.
And what they're trying to do is insert him in because he's agreed to allow the oil in Venezuela to be capitalized
by the U.S.
Right, by the U.S. and not nationalized.
It's a dirty game, Kim.
Yo, it's shit. Yeah,
It's
and
a
that's what we did in
dirty
Libya when Gaddafi. He said the same thing.
But don't you mess with our election, though. Right? You hear me?
Right. Yeah.
You don't mess
Yeah.
with our elections, though.
Right.
that's what it comes down to, because everyone's like, so, bro, you think we don't do that? You think we didn't hack? I'm like, yes, but.
Well, and I agree with that. Like, we should definitely. I know we do it all around the world.
Yeah.
And we should put an end to that. But yeah, we should also try to put an end to people doing it to us too. It's not like we should say, "Oh, well, we do it so they can."
Exactly.
No, it's like they can't.
Yeah.
We can't, and they can't.
Yeah, and so we should. I mean, look, I love that you've spun into the political kind of arena, Ken. I like that. From when
stressful. My God,
from when I first met you, you were doing the relationship advice and stuff. Yeah. So was it was it an easy jump? When did you decide to like?
No, it wasn't easy. Because it's been a huge learning curve. And politics is so big and monstrous, and you have to learn so much. And it's been 2 years now since I left the relationship radio talk show. And for me, I was just so bored doing relationship talk, and I would always come to work and talk politics, and my producers would tell me to shut up when the mics turned. They were like, "Okay, Cam, 10 seconds, let's go, switch gears. No more politics, no more politics."
Yeah.
But it was a passion of mine, and I'd always been political. When I was 11 years old, I introduced legislation to anti-deforestation legislation when I was 11 years old.
Nice, protecting the trees.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
I did anti-deforestation bill, and I was a lobbyist at one point for an environmental organization when I was 21. I've always been really political.
Yeah.
But, my career, I never went into politics because doing radio, the only radio available politically is conservative talk, and I'm not a conservative.
Yeah.
So there was really no space for me in that. And when I decided to leave relationship radio and go into political talk, the only space for me to go into was YouTube, to go online, because there's just, like I said, no liberal talk radio. Although that is shifting, and I will say that the radio companies have started reaching out again to ask what my interest would be to go back and to do what I'm doing. But what's interesting is I'd probably have to go back and do it on a conservative talk radio station, which I'm not opposed to, because I do have a lot of conservative viewers on YouTube who say they enjoy just my takes on things, even if they don't agree, because they feel like I come from a rational space rather than like an emotional space.
Yeah.
And they appreciate that, right?
It's so refreshing to see a rational woman up there.
Or a rational liberal woman, yeah, right? Like all three things combined.
Yeah.
And so I think there would be a space to go back to radio to do conservative, to be on a conservative talk station.
You would consider that?
Of course, yeah. I mean, why not? Talk to the other side.
No, but you would consider going back to radio.
Oh.
Because that's really...
I like working out of my house.
I don't have to go anywhere.
Right. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to... I can work when I want. I post videos when I feel like it.
But the beauty is everyone... So at that point, the responsibilities are somebody else's, right? Like the uploading and all that. All that stuff you don't have to
But then you still have to work for someone else. And I'm really enjoying my freedom right now in politics and in broadcasting. And... my show's doing really, really, really well. It's the fastest growing political talk show.
I've seen
on
it.
YouTube
I am genuinely.
It's crazy how fast it's growing.
Very proud of you.
I'm going to hit 50,000 subscribers this weekend.
Yeah.
And I've been going for 3 months.
Nice.
So, which is crazy.
Yeah. There's a thirst for it. There's a thirst for logical just normal, just sane,
Yeah.
Politics. Just like people are so tired of, people hitting buzzers
rhetoric,
and
right,
the flying heads and all this.
Clickbait.
Like, like people just want to hear it from like a normal human being who's not insane and like, oh yes, I get it, or I disagree. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, and being independent, like I said, I do lean left, and I admit that, but I am an independent thinker, and I often do side with Republicans and conservatives on things. When I see bullshit, I call it out. And that's important, I think, to just
Very
say,
important.
look, like this is the because then you gain more trust, and then when you do say something, they're more willing to take it seriously.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people, like I've got a lot of people that are very, very much on the left, and they feel like I'm a turncoat in some ways.
Wow.
Yeah. They'll be like, "Oh, you're a traitor," and I'm like, I'm actually doing you a favor, and you don't even realize it, because I'm gaining the trust of people on the other side because I am rational. I'm willing to tell the truth.
Yeah.
So when I tell the truth, I'm telling the truth, and they know it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's in your favor. Whereas if you say it, they're not going to listen to you because you sound crazy.
There's a credibility to someone who disagrees with you.
Right,
So I'm saying
right.
that you give that person, like, if you have the courage to disagree with me at this point, then whatever your next point is, I'm going to listen to it more closely because I want to know if you're coming from and I think there's something to it. You're absolutely right. We have to stop negating everything as they say, whoever they are for you, as dismissed. You can't do that. That's not how you win an argument. That's saying that's not how you solve an argument.
Well, and when conservatives watch my show and they think, wow, she actually agrees with us on this thing, then they're like, okay, so somebody who's not just spewing one side all the time. Yeah. And then they're willing to listen to my other points that maybe they don't agree on, and they're able to be swayed. And I get those emails every day. People saying, you swayed me on this. I didn't think this, and now I do think that. And you swayed me on that. And that's, the only way you can actually sway people and make change is if you're willing to reach and understand and try to figure out, where are you coming from? And maybe I can agree with you on a few things. And let's talk about where we do agree.
Where can the compromise be made to where change will come from it?
Right. Or just perspective.
Oh, 100%.
Like, let me understand your perspective. Where are you coming from?
Yeah.
So I can just get it.
Yeah, the more knowledge you have coming into an argument, it's better for everyone to solve.
Right.
With.
Yeah.
Kim, thank you for sitting with me.
Well, thanks for having me
Before
on.
you leave, where can we find you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so KimIversonShow.com takes you right to my YouTube channel. So however you want to spell it, because my last name is spelled S-E-N, but if you spell it O-N, it'll take you there. I bought all the domains just to be sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So KimIversonShow.com.
Yep.
Then you go to my YouTube page.
Yep.
And I try to, it's video. So I do try to upload videos, every day or every other day or something, like whenever I feel like it. That's the benefit of being independent. But it's regular videos on a regular
and the videos
basis.
are very well put together.
Thank you.
They're very well. I want to hear the next video. I'm like, oh, okay, now I got to see the next one because I got to see if this is a fluke, if I really do like it, So that's how I found myself, and I'm like, damn, Kim. First of all, you look great.
Thank you.
I'm like, Kim. First of all, you're looking good, and then second, you're dropping knowledge, and I'm like, yes, you're good. Like there's your opinions are your opinions.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
It's not like
It's been cool. I was able to interview recently a presidential candidate. I actually got to sit down with. That's like the channel's blowing up, and I've got a couple of other presidential candidates on the docket that are wanting to sit down.
You gonna get Bernie in here?
Maybe there is a bit of an outreach there. So maybe
there's always a porn star that runs. You got to get that porn star.
Seriously, right?
Just to get the mentality behind what's going on with them politically.
But I do have, I've got some more of the candidates on the docket potentially for interviews, and so that's cool. But yeah, I enjoy it. It's good. I mean, I do get a lot of shit. I try to ignore the hate because I get a lot of it.
Yeah, don't read the comments, Kim.
I try not to.
Because I
can't help it because I'm an Aries, right?
Oh,
so I fight back.
Sure, yeah, you want to dig in, but
and I do. I tell people to fuck off all the time, and then people will say like, that doesn't sound. Somebody must have hacked her account. Because I seem so polished. I'm so polished in my videos.
And you're just dropping.
Oh God, in the comment section. I'm just telling people to go to hell.
I can only imagine half of them are racist and the other half are sexist comments. Like
actually, I don't get a lot of sexism. I'm really, really fortunate. I don't get.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't really get any of that.
Yeah.
What I do get is a lot of people calling me a racist. So I get that a lot.
Yeah.
Because if I don't agree with their narrative of what's wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's easy.
then
Racist.
I'm
You're
a
racist. Boom.
Right.
You're
Yeah,
discredited.
Right.
Your opinion doesn't
or
matter.
I'm called alt-right, or I'm called a phony. You know, I only get hate from the left. I don't get any hate from the right.
Kim, you and me need to start. We need to do the alt middle,
The alt middle.
where it's just like super into minding our own fucking
Right.
business.
Yeah,
Like
the
we're
alt
just
middle.
super into like minding our own shit,
Yeah.
and we'd be the
We'll just
alt
think
middle.
for ourselves.
Like super alt. We create that. Kim, thank you again.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure, and then
Thank
we
you.
got to do this again sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you guys for listening. Tell a friend, download an episode, spread the word, help us out, help us wake the flock up. Peace.
Wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up. Everybody wake the fuck up. From the city to the burbs, every street, every curve. You can block what you heard, that's the cure. Wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up. Everybody wake the fuck up. From the city to the burbs, every street, every curve. You can block what you heard, that's the cure. Wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up.